All right, everybody. Welcome. Got some new faces in here. We were looking at the Ark of the Covenant for a while, and we spent some weeks on it. But since it's been a while, since I've been out sick and things happen, I think it's probably a good time for us to review what we did cover before we continue to the next phase, which is where we left off. Does anybody remember where we left off last time? 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago?
We were moving into, we ended up David, who wanted the ark to be in his household, but he saw his unworthiness, and he didn't interfere with it. So
Yes.
That's where we stopped.
Yes. So we covered a lot of things. First, we went through the construction of the ark, right? How it was made, who was responsible for it, because there were certain tribes responsible for each piece of it. And then the construction of the tabernacle, and in relation to the tabernacle, where the ark sits, right? So the history and the construction, and then after that we went through the history, which is the journey, right? So Sinai is basically where the first tabernacle was, right? And then from there it moved to Gilgal, Shiloh, Nob, found its way to Gibeon. And that's where David's going to take it and want to put it in a more permanent place. So, reviewing a few of the things that we covered, right? We looked through Spirit of Prophecy, we looked through the Bible, and we had a question, right? Which was the ark. Where in this room shall it go, right? And based on what we found and read, we had two conclusions. That it would either be up here or in the middle. So it was kind of like, we don't have a clear, concise pointing. Where does this thing fit, right? And I put it out there, the hypothesis of the Lord's throne being in the north. So it sounded real good to put it up here. And we have Spirit of Prophecy not going against any of that, but telling us one thing that helps us put these two pieces together. The altar of incense is directly before the Ark of the Covenant. So these two pieces cannot be separated. They're divided only by the veil, right? But the question remains, does it go up here or does it go down here? And I finally found the answer the further that we kept going. So hopefully we'll hit that today. But if we don't, just so everybody knows, the answer is found in Solomon's temple, which I'm hoping we will get to today. So we will get to that in just a little bit. So first thing first, open your Bibles to 2 Samuel chapter 6. And while you guys are opening that, I'm going to read a little thing here real quick. So where we had kind of left off last time, right? So from Beth Shemesh, the ark was removed to Kirjath Jearim, to the house of Abinadab, where it abode for 20 years. It was during this period that all Israel lamented after the Lord. Then David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel and went to bring back the ark from Kirjath Jearim to Jerusalem, the city of David, to the tent which he had there pitched for it. But on account of Uzzah putting forth his hand to steady the ark, and being slain for his rashness, for he was not a priest, and had no right to touch it, David was afraid, and would not remove the ark of the Lord unto him into the city of David, but carried it aside to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. There the ark continued 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. And it was told King David, saying, The Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom, and all that pertaineth unto him, because of the ark of the Lord of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom unto the city of David with gladness. Here it remained in the tent which David had pitched for it, till the erection of the temple, where we are soon to find the ark and the sanctuary together again. And the worship of God resumed in greater impressiveness and glory. So that last sentence there, if we go back to Eli and his sons, right? The ark and the sanctuary were separated, right? The Philistines took the ark. They took the ark. And it never made its way back. It never made its way back to the sanctuary, that same sanctuary. So even in Saul's time, when the tabernacle moved to Nob, the ark was not there. The ark was not there. It stayed in the house of Abinadab for 20 years. So finally, David goes and says, "Let's bring it to the city and give it a permanent home." Right? So now we're going to head that way. So, 1 Samuel chapter 6.
First one?
Did I say? Second Samuel, sorry. 2 Samuel. Okay. Yeah, we'll just take turns. Don, you want to start? Okay. Hey, we got Bible. You want a Bible? You want a Bible? Okay. Go ahead. All right.
Again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judea to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, that dwelleth between the cherubims. And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab, that was in Gibeah. And Uzzah and
Ahio.
the son of Abinadab, drave the new cart, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord, and all manner of instruments made of pure wood, even on harps and on
Psalteries.
and timbrels, and on cornets, and on cymbals.
You don't have to read the whole thing. This is Demetrius, you can continue.
And when they came to, how do you say that?
Nachon.
Nashon, threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it.
And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God.
Hold on right there. So what did we just read? Uzzah. Right? Why was Uzzah put down and the anger of the Lord came upon him? Because he touched the ark. But more specifically, why was he not supposed to touch the ark? He wasn't a priest. He was not a Levite. He was not a Levite. So that kindled the anger of the Lord, and there he died. It says that one of the angels struck him down. There's 4 angels that go with the ark wherever it goes, and one of the angels struck him down as soon as he did that. Okay, continue. Verse 8. I read.
And David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah, and he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day.
David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How shall the ark of the Lord come to me?"
And David was unwilling to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David with him, but David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite.
And the ark of the Lord continued in the house of Obadiah the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obadiah and all his household.
Okay, so right there. I don't think we talked about it earlier, but so we know why Uzzah fell down, right? He was cut down. And now David has this fear. Wait a minute. I'm not going to take this thing into my house yet. What gave David his fear? Why was he afraid now? You know, he was so excited. I got the ark. I'm going to bring it, and I'm going to put it in a permanent place in my city. And Lord's going to bless me like he blessed Obed-Edom. But now I'm afraid because I just saw this happen. What gave David his big fear?
He began to think about the instructions, the way in which or who should, because there were specific rules attached with the sanctuary, the instruments in the sanctuary. So he wanted to probably review them or something like that.
I was gonna say I would be a little concerned because Uzzah, I mean, it says that the oxen shook it, so he didn't even touch the ark because it's so beautiful and I wanted to touch it. He just was trying to keep it from falling. That's where and that was just the honest, I mean, if I see your computer falling off the table, my first reaction is to try to catch it. So
It's a sincere reaction.
Right. Right. I think that's where.
A sincere reaction.
What the Spirit of prophecy said that he always cherished in his heart. He wanted to touch it. It's not. So that's why.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah.
No, the Spirit of prophecy said that.
Yeah, but the other thing is that he knew.
Yes.
He knew. Because the other thing that we got to remember is that Uzzah was Abinadab's son. The ark stayed in his house for 20 years. He grew up with this thing. He knew what he was supposed to do and not do. But him, not being a Levite, went to hold this thing up. Got cut down immediately. So now, David's fearful. Why is David fearful?
I think, too, he just witnessed the magnificence of God and realizing, I agree with, I don't know his name, but that there is, a standard and there were instructions to set it up, and David wanted it to be set up the best way he could possibly do that. So I think that's where the fear was coming from, mainly.
You're on the right track. So for this answer, we got to look at David's character. We got to look at his history.
Well, I'm looking at Patriarchs and Prophets,
Uh-huh.
and on the chapter titled
What is
The
it?
Reign of David,
You got the.
Patriarchs and Prophets.
PP, that's prophets and kings.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 69, The Reign of David. And
Reign of David.
it said here on what happened to Uzzah, David, I'm starting at page 705, paragraph 1. Okay, so let me start from the beginning of the paragraph. But when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his rashness. And there he died by the ark of God. A sudden terror fell upon the rejoicing throng. David was astonished and greatly alarmed, and in his heart he questioned the justice of God. So that's what was happening. And to continue, he had been seeking to honor the ark as the symbol of the divine presence. Why then had that fearful judgment been sent to turn the season of gladness into an occasion of grief and mourning? Feeling that it would be unsafe to have the ark near him, David determined to let it remain where it was. A place was found for it nearby at the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite.
Now read the next sentence.
The fate of Uzzah was a divine judgment upon the violation of a most explicit command. Through Moses, the Lord had given special instructions concerning the transportation of the ark. None but the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were to touch it or even to look upon it uncovered.
Who are the Levites.
Yeah, they were Levites.
So,
Yep.
so it didn't hit David right off the bat, right? That this was a violation, right?
Didn't you just say, or to look at it?
Yeah.
Or to look inside.
Uncovered, yeah.
Uncovered.
They were
Yeah,
priests.
I mean,
The Levites were priests.
so I'm just assuming that David didn't know that rule because, I mean, that happened, sometime as far as the priest taking care of it. So when he saw somebody getting struck down for what he saw was, he saw it about to fall, let me just try to help it up, and then he gets struck down. And then David's saying, well, that can't be fair. Why would you do something to somebody who's just trying to keep it from falling over?
I got another reference here. For ASG 11111. Top 2.
Let's say GSG.
Spiritual gifts, 1-4. So it goes a little deeper, right? David knew. He had to have known because he was a king, right? And he knows this is how the ceremony goes and everything, right? But what he sees there, Uzzah struck him down from a violation. That right there was Uzzah basically sinning. David looks at himself, right? And what we see at this reference here, it says that David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, how shall the ark of the Lord come to me? So David would not remove the ark of the Lord unto him into the city of David, but David carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. David knew that he was a sinful man and was afraid that, like Uzzah, he should in some way be presumptuous and call forth the wrath of God upon himself. That is why David was fearful. And that is why the ark had to go somewhere else in the meantime. Because he needed to cleanse himself first. And we're going to see that in the next chapter. What verse did we leave off of? 12. Right? Let's continue.
And it was told King David, saying, the Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom, and all that pertaineth unto him, because the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness.
I can go. And it was so that when they that bare the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with the linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart.
Man, that is a lot of sacrificing. Did that say every 6 steps?
Yeah.
Every 6 steps. There goes a calf. Every 6 steps. There goes a calf. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Tristan. We are looking at 2 Samuel chapter 6 right now. This is a continuation of the Ark of the Covenant study that we're doing. Its history. So, this is a big thing for the Lord, right? We're going to sacrifice every 6 steps because we're going to show God, here, another sacrifice. Here, we're going to keep ourselves clean as we're moving the Ark to where we want it to be permanently, where God wants it to be permanently, right? So, verse, was it 15?
I stopped at 17.
17, okay. Yeah. Let's keep going.
So they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent with David, which David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And when David had finished offering the burnt offering and the peace offering, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts.
And he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men, to every one a cake of bread and a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed, every one to his house.
And David returned to bless his household, and Michal, the doctor, and Saul came out to meet David and said, "How glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovered himself." And David said unto Michal, "It was before the Lord which chose me before thy father, and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord.
And I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. Therefore Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child unto the day of her death."
Michael.
That's a harsh punishment, isn't it? And she was who? Saul's daughter, right? She was Saul's daughter. The dignity and pride of King Saul's daughter was shocked that King David should lay aside his garments of royalty and lay by his royal scepter and be clothed with the simple linen garments worn by the priest. That's why she was angry.
Wait a minute, so I thought that he was dancing naked.
He was not really
What?
naked.
I think he
Yeah,
was,
people
but
were
he had
under
a
the pretense
small...
that he was naked, but the Bible said he had the ephod,
Where's the verse
14.
that says he's naked?
No, that says
No,
that he
oh,
broke
yeah.
the
Yeah, but
law.
usually, I'm just looking at the benefits of reading for myself. Because
Yes.
naked in the sense of the king is supposed to be dressed in royal apparel, whereas he just puts on the simple ephod. So as a king, he's somewhat, basically it's like the pastor wearing a polo shirt coming to preach. He's naked, You should wear a suit and a tie to address the people, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that fixes the naked conspiracy.
But the linen, the priest usually wears the linen, which is especially on the day of atonement, which I think will have some reverence or something attached with it. He took his,
Kingly robes.
I'm talking about the high priest, when he's going into the most holy. He goes in with the linen, just linen. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't consider that irreverent. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, based on the text, it's not irreverent because we see that the fact that she was struck with barrenness as a result of her reaction, because the apparel that David took on, it's really a priestly attire. And if you're dealing with the Ark of the Covenant and you dress like that, then clearly that's one of the utmost reverence you can give. He was dressed in the ephod, and we know what that represents.
When we see that word ephod, that should be, hey, priestly robes, right? So, Very good, very good.
And we say that Adam and Eve, that nakedness wasn't a type of nakedness they had.
Because there's not really
Because, I mean, Adam and Eve were not literally naked, they were probably just, in terms of covering God gave them.
well, you're talking about
It
the
was
light of
light.
God,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
different, that's different here,
Let's
that's
go on.
different here, right?
And then because they made fig leaves.
But this was more of like an idolization that she had with, the kingly garments. How dare he take off the kingly garments and then wear these, cheap little linen robes that the priests wear. So she puts the priests below the king, even more,
Well, they
So-
also desired Christ to come as a king instead of as a humble servant.
There's a psychological thing that's ongoing, right? And it goes all the way to Jesus' time and why the Jews didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah. Which, very interesting point that I was reading yesterday. So at the end of the construction of the temple, right, they ended the construction. Herod's repurposing of the temple, they ended that construction right when Jesus began his ministry. Very interesting point. They still missed it, right? Because that goes back to the prophecy of, was it Ruth, I think, that said that
The glory of the former
will be there when?
Nahum.
Is it not right? Oh.
It's one of the prophets.
It's one of the women prophets. I can't remember exactly. I had the reference, but I didn't write it down. I should have wrote it down. But
Nahum was the prophet that said that, because the older men that saw Solomon's temple, they looked at it, and they're like, they mourned, and the Bible is saying they couldn't tell the difference between the mourning and the rejoicing because the camp was somewhat divided. But on the point that Russ made about royalty, even the wise men who studied the prophecy that the Messiah is born, or who is born King of the Jews, if you look, they were also looking for royalty because they first went to Herod's kingdom to find the seed, because they're like, hey, where's the royal seed that is born? And Herod is like, hey, when you find it, let me know. So the fact that they went into Herod's temple or kingdom to look for the promised seed, so to speak, they were under the pretense too that this must be someone born to Herod,
Also the fact that the kind of gifts that they gave him was,
kingly
for
gifts,
royalty.
frankincense,
Yeah.
myrrh, kingly gifts. So they totally missed the point, right? All right. So yeah, very good, very good.
Does that speak further? Can I ask one last part of that?
Yes.
While we're going with, I don't know, prophetic parallels and tying them to the New Testament. Michael was struck barren because of her unwillingness to, see the value in what David, the righteousness in what David, how he was approaching the situation. She was struck barren, and those who look for Christ only for that aspect of, personal gain, or they're missing who Christ really is, will be barren in their spiritual walk.
Very good point. Yes, indeed. All right, so yeah, some good lessons to learn here. Let's go now to First Chronicles. Chapter 15. Chapter 15. And we're going to see here. Hey, brother, what's your name?
Macho.
Macho? Macho. All right. So, yeah, what your question about David? We have the answer right here.
Yeah, but I don't.
First Chronicles, chapter 15. Chapter 15. Wherever we left off.
What was that?
First thing.
First,
In the very beginning, what we were reading.
oh, that was, no, First Chronicles. No, oh no, what I was reading from the, that's the sanctuary, no, the sanctuary in 2300 days by Uriah Smith, one of the pioneers. So it's actually there's two books that I've been looking at that I'll tell you a little bit later. I've been very helpful with digging that I've been doing. Yeah, the 2300 day prophecy and the sanctuary. Or the sanctuary. Here, hold on. I'll tell you right now.
Or I have to get it after.
The sanctuary and the 2300 days of Daniel. That's the name of the book. All right, everybody there? Start up here. You guys want to just read a verse and then go. Verse 1.
For his own use, David built houses in David's city. He also prepared a place for God's covenant box and put up a tent for it.
Then David said, "None ought to carry the ark of God but the Levites. For them hath the Lord chosen to carry the ark of God and to minister unto him forever."
So there's the answer, right, that we were looking for. Right? David knows none should touch the ark, none should carry the ark but the Levites.
But let me ask a question. Was not a Levite.
Uzzah was
So
not.
what was he doing?
The ark was in his house.
Yes, but was he carrying it?
No, it was on top of the oxen.
So he was like walking beside it or something like
He was walking beside it, which is another interesting thing too, because
Not on top of the oxen.
not
Right?
It was a card.
it was a cart, right?
The cart.
Yeah, not on the back of the oxen. Yeah, on the cart. The mule was carrying it. But see, the funny thing is that the exact same lesson was given to them just a few years before with Eli, right?
Yeah,
And his sons. When the Philistines took the oxen, the ark, right? And then when they sent it back, they put it on a cart. And the ox went by themselves. And who was guiding the ark? By itself, right? So that was a lesson right there of, do you trust God to take care of the thing himself, right? Does he really need your hand to hold it from falling down if he can guide two cows by themselves, nobody leading them, back to the village of Israel, right? But he apparently forgot that small little lesson.
So when you look at the instruction that God gave to Moses to give to all the priests who will come after, they were never even though they were priests, they were not supposed to even touch it directly.
Yeah.
They were supposed to hold it by the staves, so
there you go.
no one was permitted to touch it physically at all. You had these things on it like handle, and that's what you would hold without touching the ark itself.
And these staves are long, by the way. They're huge. Was it 10 cubits, I think? Exodus 25 tells us. But we will skip that for now.
Were there Levitical women priests?
No.
What's their point?
Moving on.
No, I was not going there. I just.
Moving on.
This is an Ark of the Covenant class. Okay?
Yeah.
Not social justice, all right?
That's not right. I'm leaving.
Okay, all right. Verse 3, where we stopped, right?
And David gathered all Israel together at Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord to its place which he had prepared for it.
And David gathered together the sons of Aaron and the Levites.
Of the sons of Conan, Uriel the chief and his brethren, and 120.
Of the son of Mer, Asahi the chief and his brethren 220.
Of the sons of Gershom, Joel the chief and his brethren 130.
Of the sons of Elizaphan, Shemaiah the chief and his brethren 200.
Nine.
Of the sons of Hebron, Eliel the chief and his brethren 80.
The son of Oziel, Aminadab, the chief, and his brethren, 112.
And David called for Zadok and Abiathar, the priest, and for the Levites, for Uriel, Asaiah, and Joel, Shemaiah, and
Eliel.
Eliel, and another name I can't
Aminadab.
Verse 12, Russ.
And said unto them, Ye are the chief of the fathers of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, both ye and your brethren, that ye may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel unto the place that I have prepared for it. For because ye did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us, for that we sought him not after the due order.
Oh. So that was the reason why, he's, okay.
So,
Yeah.
and we see too, like, because based on the point that Macho brought out, if someone reading the Bible and not continue the story, then naturally you're going to walk away and say, God is not just, he is not fair, and he just make things look so arbitrary, hard rule, just smite people down. But here is David who experienced that, and he's saying, hey, we didn't sanctify ourselves the first time around, and that is why whatever took place. So clearly he's taking responsibility that we did something wrong in not following, and he uses the word order in verse 13, for that we sought him not after the due order. So God had a way how he was doing things, So he's setting things in right proportion. Okay, I'm going to get the priest. Hey, priest, sanctify yourselves so that God can bless. And that says a lot about how God works.
Amen. Yes, God is a God of order.
But Uzzah wasn't a priest.
Uzzah was not a priest. He was not a Levite.
But so he was punished. Yeah, he wasn't a Levite. He was the one that was punished for touching him. But are you saying this? If the priests had sanctified themselves, Uzzah wouldn't have died for touching the ark? Is that what you were?
They would have sought the Lord, like they would have sought him before they even picked it up and transported it.
Yeah.
They should have,
It would have been done differently.
Yeah.
Uzzah probably wouldn't even been near the thing.
Yes, because
they probably have a lot more respect.
They would have had the
they would have the
priests.
stairs
Yeah.
and those things. So maybe it would.
Yeah. So they did it disorderly is what happened there. Right? So that
In 2 Samuel 6, the ark is traveling and there's a throng accompanying the ark. But this time around now we see multitudes of priests because each one came with 80, 200, 300. So the multitude carrying the ark now as it travels is not the Israelite throng just dancing and carrying on with a different instrument. This is now people who have consecrated themselves, and they're the ones bearing the responsibility of transporting the ark. So Uzzah, people like Uzzah is not around in this throng that is now carrying it. Unlike before, they were just careless with it. And when you look at the symbol that Arthur just drew, after Uzzah died, every 6 steps, they now begin to offer a sacrifice. So now they're saying, okay, we gotta be careful and deliberate in what we're doing. So unfortunately, it took that to bring a level of seriousness to the Ark of the Covenant as it was being transported.
You know what comes up here again? 7. Remember we were talking about 7? We were talking about 7 a couple weeks ago? Perfection. God does a lot of stuff. And we're seeing a pattern of 7, right? So every 6 steps.
Six
Those 7
paces.
6 paces.
And paces may not be a step.
Okay.
Alright.
Just
Base.
A base.
So, yeah.
It could be a
Yeah.
measurement, a Hebrew measurement that was.
So they had to go for miles.
They use the metric system,
Mile
right?
or whatever.
Just bring a lot of animals.
Yeah,
I think they still be marching.
It's a bloody journey.
But yeah, we see the pattern again, right? So every 6 steps, they would stop.
Pace.
Base.
Pace.
What's the difference?
Pace.
We're gonna use the word
Geometry class here, you know.
I mean, how many years would it take them to get there in all 6 steps?
Exactly.
Yeah, how many animals had to be,
That would be.
We don't know. 6 pace.
How many
On
animals?
the 7.
We're gonna keep going. You're gonna see this again, actually.
Okay.
And the animals are innumerable.
Mm.
This is what we're gonna read a little bit later. But yeah, this comes up again. And remember that because we're gonna see this like 3 more times. 7. This is how the Lord likes doing things, right? All right. Let's continue. What verse were we at?
Verse
14.
14. Okay. 15.
No, start with 14.
Oh, 14. Okay. So the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel.
And the children of the Levites bear the ark of God upon their shoulders, with the staves thereon, as Moses commanded according to the word of the Lord. And David spake to the chief of the Levites to appoint their brethren to be the singers with instruments of music, psalteries, and harps and cymbals, sounding by lifting up the voice with joy.
Okay. Irene, you're the musical scholar in the class. What is a psaltery?
It's it's like a guitar.
It's a guitar.
Classic of guitar.
How many strings?
Okay.
It has different strings.
So-
It has a lot of strings.
So that means they were departing from the command of the Lord. That's why that happened, because they had to go back to all God commanded them to take the ark, to transport the ark.
Re-sanctify themselves. Prepare themselves to do this.
Yes.
Because they realize
It's like they were
this
careless.
isn't something that we can just go and, oh, I'm going to move this chair, you know, hey, anybody grab this chair. No, we got to prepare. This is God's throne. This is God's seat. We need to prepare. We need to sanctify ourselves because we're dealing with something very serious here, right? This is the throne of the Creator, you know? Let's prepare ourselves. So that's what it means by them sanctifying themselves. And all these men, right? Russ.
Yeah, when we read that they put the staves thereon, like I heard oohs and ahs. Is that because you came to a conclusion that they weren't doing that before? And if not, what was the ooh?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, right. They didn't
They
follow
were doing
the right.
that in the previous?
Yeah, the right procession wasn't followed. So yeah, they put it on the back of a cart, right?
Just like
And
the
it was
Philistines.
bouncing around.
Like just
Right.
Nobody was
That's-
carrying it.
that's-
They had the steps for a reason. They weren't using it.
And the staves never come out. Staves never
Yeah,
come out. So it's there and they see it and it's like, hey, why don't you use it?
Yeah. Take it out and put it on the
Yeah, let's
cart.
put it on a cart, you know.
Yes, they were operating like they were the heathens that ruled the people who did not know. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is not acceptable in the eyes of God. So, Uzzah gets struck down by an angel. Welcome, Brother Michael.
Thank you.
Hey, good to see you.
Long time.
All right.
You got the answer now, Russ? Why we were going, ooh.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I was just figuring they did that in the first time.
They did that.
Yeah,
No, they
failed.
Did they wonder what they were there for? You know? Handcrafted gold rings on the sides. But
With
you're
staves
right.
to them, maybe we
We do
should
the
pick
same.
it up with the handle, yeah. That's, sadly, right? But it's interesting, right? Because you think about what happened when the ark was with the Philistines, and once again, you think that the children of Israel would have learned from these lessons. And no, not enough.
Yeah, just not a clarification, but if you trace the life of the Levites to minister with the sanctuary things, that was like second nature for them. They were born with that inclination where everyone born in the Levite family at some point were educated about the things, with the things of the sanctuary. So as it relates to what Russ is asking about, did they know? David chose the Levites because right from the base at Mount Sinai, God did select the Levites and He put it in their hearts and minds how to deal with the things of the sanctuary. So they knew. We see when they put it on the cart, they just basically procrastinated with what God told them to do through Moses. That's basically what happened. But when it's on the priest's shoulder, because if you trace it back, how did they cross the Jordan? They crossed the Jordan because the priest who bore the ark, their feet touched the water, and that's when it parted. It's not like the movies where Moses lifted up his staff and say, hey, what that you read the Bible for yourself. It's when the priest walking by faith as if they were going to go through the water. As soon as the priest's feet touch the water, that's when it parted. So God works in that order, and we just see them know finally it clicks in David's mind. We got to go back to what the Lord told Moses, and we're going to follow it to the T so that God can bless the transportation of the ark.
Yes, indeed, and that Joshua 5, right, chapter 5, chapter 4, Joshua chapter 4. We went over that weeks ago, which that was a really good study about that, and we'll also remember that Jesus walked in front of them, and they followed the water parted, right? So Jesus walked in front of the ark as they were going there. Now, I just put this reference up here. Let me, that's in First Spirit of Prophecy, chapter 36, if anybody has it. And an interesting thing here, right, that going back to what happened, right, what happened. God would teach the people, His people, that while His ark was a terror and death to those who transgressed His commandments contained in it, it was also a blessing and strength to those who are obedient to His commandments. So right there, it's obvious that Uzzah was breaking. He was transgressing the law. He wasn't following the commandments, right? Got struck down. But of course, blessings come if you don't transgress the law and you are obedient to it. Just like it was in his father's house for those 20 years, and they were blessed, right? Ironically, that should have been a big lesson to him, him living there, but it wasn't enough. So, continuing on, when David heard that the house of Obed-Edom was greatly blessed, and that he had prospered because of the ark of God, he was anxious to bring it to his own city. But before David ventured to move the sacred ark, he sanctified himself to God, and also commanded that all the men, highest in authority in the kingdom, should keep themselves from all worldly business and everything which would distract their minds from sacred devotion. Thus should they sanctify themselves for the purpose of conducting the sacred ark to the city of David. So once again, taking this thing serious. It's not a box. It's the sacred ark, right? Let's sanctify ourselves. We've got to prepare ourselves. This is a serious thing. This is God's box, you know. We got to take the law is in there. You know, the law. And if you're obedient to it, the law blesses you or it cuts you down if you are a transgressor, like the Philistines would find out. So, let's continue. What verse did we leave off? 17? 17?
Yeah,
17. Forgot where we left off, so I'll show you. So the Levites appointed Heman, the son of Joel, and his brethren, Asaph, the son of Berechiah, and of the sons of Merari, their brethren, Ethan, the son of Cushaiah.
Um,
18.
and with them their brethren of the second degree, Zechariah, then Jaziel, and Shemiramoth, Jahiel, Uni, Eliab, Benaiah, Messiah, Matithiah, Elipheleh, Micaiah, Obed-Edom, Jael,
Man, I'm telling you, we have really boring names, you know. Look at this.
What do you do with Mike? So the singers, Heman, Asaph, and Ethan were appointed to song with cymbal of brass.
And Zechariah and Aziel and Shemiramoth and Jehiel and Uni and and how do we say that one?
Maaseiah, Benaiah, with psalteries and Alama.
And all those young men with harps on the shement to excel.
Hey man, we went through it. Give me the name.
You serious? Okay. And
No, I'm kidding. You go.
And Shenaniah, chief of the Levites, was for song. He instructed about the song because he was skillful.
Skillful.
Michael, yeah, go ahead.
Pick up at verse 23.
20, yeah.
Berechiah and Elzekaiah were doorkeepers for the ark.
Elkanah. And I know that one because I had a friend with that name.
Elkanah is
Elkanah.
Samuel's father.
Is it the same? It might, no, I don't think so, because by here, Samuel's been dead.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And Shebaniah and Jehoshaphat and Nathaniel and Amasai and Zechariah and Benaiah and Eleazar, the priest, did blow with the trumpets before the ark of God. And Obed-Edom and Jehiram were doorkeepers for the ark.
So David and the elders of Israel and the captains over thousands went to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the house of Obed-Edom with joy.
And it came to pass when God helped the Levites that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, that they offered 7 bullocks and 7 rams.
Now David was clothed with a robe of fine linen with all the Levites who were carrying the ark, and the singers, and Chenaniah, the leader of the singers, with the singers. or singing with the singers. David also wore an ephod of linen.
One question. David wearing a linen. I mean, that type of, because David was not a priest. Because he was from the tribe of Judah. Why did he?
Maybe because he wasn't a Levite, and they have to clean, they have to be purified before they would enter the holies of holies. And if you get close to the ark, because he's so close to it, maybe he could have been injured in some way, even though he's anointed, but he wasn't a Levite. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why he has less clothes on.
David's the one doing the dedication, right?
Oh, okay.
So he's in turn the spokesperson for the people. So that's why he's donning the robes like the high priest, right? Because he's the one who's going to speak to God and dedicate the new tabernacle, the new place of the ark for the children of Israel.
Because I've noticed, even from Uzzah got knocked down, David was careful not to touch the ark. I mean.
Yeah, even here, it's going. The Levites got it. He's not touching it.
That's what I'm saying.
He's in front of it, dancing and being happy, right? Hey, we're gonna take this thing finally to a place, but you guys stay,
And he's anointed.
stay right over there. But he's himself sanctified, leading the way. Yeah.
1 Samuel chapter 2:18. First Samuel chapter 2:18.
2:18. All right.
We can actually read from verse 16 for context. We have covered it where it's like 1 Samuel 2, verse 16 to 18. It says, "And if any man said unto him, Let him not fail to burn the fat presently, and then take as much as thy soul desireth, then he would answer him, Nay, but thou shalt give it me now, and if not, I will take it by force," referring to Hophni and Phinehas. So they were extorting the peace offering from the sinners who came to offer the offerings. Verse 17 says, "Wherefore the sin of the young men," referring to Hophni and Phinehas, "was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering of the Lord. But Samuel ministered before the Lord, being a child, girded with a linen ephod." So when those two boys and their father defiled the temple, we see Samuel now offering. Samuel steps into the gap, and the clothing that Samuel was wearing is the garment of the priest. Alright? So basically, yeah. So right now when you go in David's time period, this is a continuation because Eli was the last established priest with his two boys, and when that sanctuary was desecrated, as Arthur pointed out a couple weeks ago, we find that we don't have a tabernacle. There's no sanctuary anymore. All we have is this portion, the ark being transported all over. So Samuel played the role of the priest when Eli and his sons died. And he was dressed in the linen ephod. Now on the dedication with this thing moving, David now is playing the role of the priest, and that is why he's not in the kingly attire, he's wearing priestly attire. So I just wanted to share that second witness, why David is now dressed in linen ephod. He's playing the role of the priest.
And David, I've seen where David offer sacrifice. Remember,
And that's makes me think of another thing too, because who's the king, right? The Lord of all kings, right? So we're dedicating something to the king. I'm not worthy to wear a kingly attire. No, I'll put on my priestly gear because I'm dedicating this to the Most High King of all kings, right? So why am I going to dress up like a king if he's the true king? So I see no point in him wearing kingly
But
attire.
he's also the
at
true
this point.
priest, so,
The true high
That's
priest.
so,
Yes. But
He's an anti-type.
He-
He's a
Russ likes jumping ahead.
Hold him
We're
back.
gonna hold him back. Alright.
I'm just looking at verse 28.
Well, you can read it for us.
Oh,
Is that where we're
no,
at?
I'm not
We're
there.
at 27, right?
28.
28? Okay, go ahead.
Thus all Israel brought up the ark of the covenant of the Lord with shouting, and with sound of the cornet, and with trumpets, and with cymbals, making a noise with psalteries and harps. And it came to pass, as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came to the city of David, that Michal the daughter of Saul, looking out at a window, saw King David dancing and playing, and she despised him in her heart.
There she is again, right? So to reiterate her displeasure, right? She thought that he was greatly dishonoring himself before the people of Israel. But God honored David in the sight of all Israel by letting his spirit abide upon him. David humbled himself, but God exalted him. He sung in an inspired manner, playing upon the harp, producing the most enchanting music. This is interesting. What David felt at that time, in a small degree, that holy joy that all the saints will experience at the voice of God when their captivity is turned. And God makes a covenant of peace with all who have kept his commandments. So, that's at the end. He got a taste of that. Brother Michael.
Michal, is she and David, they're not married at this point?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I find interesting about this, tell me if you agree with this commentary, is that David, after he slew Goliath and fell into grace with Saul, well, actually before the slaying of Goliath, Saul invited little David in to play, to minister to him, because he was depressed.
Oh, yeah,
And so David would come in and play
the
thing.
harp. Uh-huh.
So it's funny that his wife now would have her issues because this is his element.
Yeah,
He's
chastise him, right?
excited about this. This is his spiritual enlightenment. So he's dancing, and she's like, "Oh, what is he doing?" You know, she's like, "We are exalted people. We don't do this. We don't lower ourselves to this kind of."
It's that idolatry thinking that has permanence, basically, right? Because we saw a few weeks ago, the reason God took the ark away, the reason God left the sanctuary was because Israel was looking at the ark as an idol. They weren't seeing the power behind it, which was God himself.
Right.
So the Philistines took the ark.
He allowed that to happen.
But he allowed that to happen. So they went, grabbed the ark, took it out into the battlefield thinking that they were going to win. And they were all slaughtered because they forgot the power behind the ark. Idolatry.
There's another application coming out too. I mean, we're reading about it a lot. The musical aspect, the playing of the instruments, the musical selection, and if you look at it carefully, the musicians were also Levites. Because you couldn't just play any kind of music, and the singers themselves needed to be as consecrated as was the priest themselves, you know, and my wife is thinking about it, but she doesn't want to say it, so I'll just say it. So basically, right, the worship, when you look at worship from this perspective, we already have very high expectation of the pastor and the elder, you know, the leaders of the church, but very little emphasis is placed on the musicians. Musicians can dress any way, look anyhow, sing anything, and carry out worship as we come, you know.
You even have to be part of the congregation at times.
So
right?
So it was a complete package, like everyone dealing with the transportation of the ark, from the singers to the priests themselves, all were expected to be consecrated and take their office seriously.
Yep. And in turn, what happens? God let his spirit abide on him, right? And David played inspired music. He sung in an inspired way. So he felt the spirit, and it wasn't just, like whatever music.
That caught my interest also, so I was like jotting down all of these different verses with the musical instruments specifically. So how I'm taking it at least is that I understand the part about being consecrated, like you said, approaching the music from a certain way, but from what I'm hearing, there isn't really an issue with guitars, with cymbals, and things of that nature being used. Is there?
No.
Okay, because it got real quiet for a minute.
I saw some hands pop up. So I was like, okay, anybody want to interject here? Go ahead, Michael. You're gonna speak afterwards too. I wanna hear what you got. Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's appropriate to bring up, there is a Adventist pastor by the name of Igor
Myers.
He's from Jamaica.
Yeah.
He was in the world of hip hop. He was in the world of hip hop, and in fact, he and his partners got a multi-million-dollar contract in the recording industry. He has a sermon about this very issue. I think sheds light on it, that we have the mixture in modern context of hip hop and secular music in the altar of God, and it's not. Now, you can't break down an instrument. You cannot just say that a guitar should not be there. But drums and some of the other instruments we hear, and he breaks it down, and it's very powerful that secular music has the drums, and it gets us into the movement, and we become hypnotized. And therefore, you're not listening to the hymn and the harmony, which is what Jesus Christ represents. And so it's a very, very powerful testimony on the use of hip hop that might shed some light on your question. So it's not the instruments, but how it's played, what it does to people, and they even, I believe it was the same testimony, it showed a video clip of a voodoo ceremony in Africa, and the drums and the ceremony in a church. And the people were like moving, they're just like getting down, man. It's that is not the Holy Spirit movement that it was meant for.
Irene, can you, since we're on, can you bring up that quote? Can you bring
Well,
up
I'd
that
like
quote?
to answer specifically what you said
Oh, I see, you got scared.
about the psalteries, because I mentioned a while ago that it's somehow like a guitar, and then you mentioned the cymbals.
Right.
But just really going back to the real situation here was that the cymbals are nothing like the cymbals that we have today. The cymbals that were being used in this particular time is small, like this, and it was something that they can use in between their fingers.
Finger cymbal.
And it was used only to signal that particular section of the worship where, for example, the priest will need to stand, ting, and then you need to go walk here, ting, we don't do that today. So that's a simple point. And then just to piggyback on what Brother Michael said about the instruments, there's nothing wrong with, I will say this, with drums, with electric guitar, that's not evil. But how it's played, in what context, in what occasion. That's where something goes wrong. And then on verse 22, here, I would like to emphasize that the musicians that were chosen were skillful, which meant that even if they were to play a cymbal or a drum, because they were skillful enough and educated enough, they would not use it in worship. They would not sing in a way that is not going to glorify
Hold on, right there.
Because they were skillful.
Hold on right there.
I want to
That point is very important because it goes to what I was about to say. What we're seeing here, remember, they're not in the temple. They're outside. They're outside.
Yeah.
And they're bringing the ark in, right? They're not in the temple. David's dancing. Would you dance in the sanctuary? You wouldn't dance in the sanctuary. They weren't playing this music in the temple. Once they're in the temple, you never see this. There's no music. There's no singing and dancing like this. So that's another thing to remember. Remember, David never danced in the temple. He never played instruments.
But I just wanted to end my point before you say
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
The problem today is like with today's worship, the musicians that are being chosen are not, they're just trying to copy what the world does. You know, I heard it the way it's sung on YouTube, and this is how I'm going to sing it when I go to church and sing it that way too, without knowing.
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
Yeah, I want to make a comment on the drum. I have heard an expert. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't remember his name. I don't remember if he's a pastor. And he said the drum can only be played one way. You know, he took us through the whole, technicality of it, and he says the drum can only be played one way. And when the drum is being played, like Gavin said earlier, it causes you to move. It's like a move. It's like more. It's like it surpassed the frontal lobe and we are the base apart the lower whatever I don't remember the term. But what I'm saying,
limbic
system. The drum. He said the drum, and he went as far as saying, look, if you can listen to a guitar, like if you hear a guitar playing or let's say a harmony or something like that, you can't tell what music is playing. But the drum, it just play one way. You can't, if you hear the drum, you cannot tell what type of music.
I think you're talking about Scott Ritzema. Because he did. Scott Ritzema?
I don't remember.
He did
it's a long time I've seen it. I don't remember.
Where you're talking, it's the limbic, it excites the limbic system in your brain. And that's what makes you want to move, you want to dance. Right? Want to move. There's so many hands. So, go right ahead, right here. What's your name?
Margaret.
Margaret.
Hey, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret. Welcome.
I'm not sure if this is something to be said, but I think if the church as a whole wants the church to take music seriously, I think they need to pay musicians. I think that's a problem. And so, like, we have skillful musicians. We have skillful musicians in the church, but they can't make a living out of it, so they go into like medicine or something, and then the people who are left are not skillful. So if we really want to take it seriously, we need to present musicians as a serious ministry. But the church doesn't pay artists.
Sometimes they do pay, and they pay people from the outside to come and play the music. That's how bad it's gotten. Yeah, bro.
So Margaret means Irene Margaret. You guys can talk after and go to hymns for worship. Moving on.
Hey, so does anybody have the cross in the shadow?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what chapter we're on? 4? Chapter 4?
The Ark of the Covenant.
Does it say anything? Well, no, not chapter 4. Chapter 3.
Chapter 2. Section 2.
3. No, chapter 3. Chapter 3.
Rip through it and back.
History of the Sanctuary.
Yes.
Page 33.
Yes. So there's a block here that I want to look at because now we're finally getting to where the ark's going to sit, right? The new tabernacle that David's setting up. But here's another beautiful connection. What?
I'm just saying you have to let the newcomers know this is the textbook
Oh, yes.
for the class.
Yeah. You guys don't know. That book that he's holding up, that is the book that we're referencing here, The Cross in the Shadow. It's sort of a basis for this class and the study of the sanctuary. So that's why we keep going back to that. I reference some other books, but that's not required literature for the class. So bring just spirit of prophecy in the Bible if that's all you do. But go to where it says the Lord chose the exact spot.
That's on page 34, paragraph 3.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So David is heading towards this place, right? This is good stuff right here. This is really good stuff. So I want you to start from there. We're gonna read like the 4 paragraphs, I think. Where is David putting this ark?
The tent.
Under 10.
Where is this tent going? This tabernacle. Go ahead, brother.
So it says here, the Lord chose the exact spot for the offering of Isaac. He said to Abraham, right? That's where I should be. Okay. He said to Abraham, get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him therefore a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell of thee. And that's actually quoting Genesis chapter 22, verse 2.
So does everybody know where Mount Moriah is today? Mount Zion.
Jerusalem.
Moriah is Mount Zion.
Oh, yeah?
Jerusalem.
Mount Moriah is Mount Zion.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is?
Jerusalem. Okay. And where what's sitting up there, right? As we're reading right now. That is where. No.
Yeah.
Hold. Quit jumping ahead, man. Calm down.
We're gonna plug him.
We're gonna get there next week at this pace. So, no. What we're reading here is Abraham. We're going back to Genesis, okay?
Oh, Isaac.
Abraham and Isaac. The Lord told Abraham, take your son to Mount Moriah and sacrifice him as a type. As a type. Your son, like my son. Right? Continue, brother.
As Abraham and Isaac went on that memorable journey, they were directed by the Lord to Mount Moriah. And when they came to the place, Abraham built an altar and bound Isaac upon it, ready to sacrifice him, but the Lord stayed his hand. Keep going. So the spot where such loyalty to God was shown was ever afterward honored by the Lord. But the devil as well as the Lord watched over this place. He knew it was sacred to Jehovah because there God had tested the faith of the man he honored by calling him his friend. James chapter 2 verse 23 quoted. For more than 4,000 years after the 400, for more than 400 years after the children of Israel entered the promised land, Satan held this place. It was a stronghold of the enemy in the midst of Israel, but it was finally captured by David, who made it the capital of his kingdom. Afterward, Jerusalem was called the city of David. 2 Samuel 5, 6 to 9.
Okay, very good. So this is a bad drawing because I don't have a map, right? This is sort of what Jerusalem looks like today. Dome of the Rock. Yep. Okay. This right here, this is Mount Moriah. It's in the city. And this is where the temple used to sit. Abraham brought Isaac here before there was anything. And at the same spot, we're going to see the city of David. Read the next paragraph.
The threshing floor of Ornan, the Jebusite, where the angel of the Lord appeared to David, was on this same spot. The prophet told David to erect an altar on the threshing floor, and there David made a special consecration to the Lord. A few years later, the temple, which was erected without sound of hammer, occupied this same plot of land.
Solomon's temple.
2 Chronicles chapter 3 verse 1 quoted, God had conquered, and he designed the place should ever be hallowed by his presence. But his people were unfaithful, And when the Lord of light came to his own temple, he was despised and crucified, and the holy of the sacred temple passed into the hands of the Gentiles. Satan is guarding this spot vigilantly.
Stop right there. Stop right there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, King David was told that he couldn't build because he had too much bloodshed. Wasn't it Solomon that built this temple?
It's Solomon's temple.
Yes.
It's Solomon's temple. And we're almost there. We're almost there. So we're gonna get to exactly that. But I wanted you guys to see this connection. This is where the first type that we have in the Bible of Jesus Christ. Abraham and his son Isaac being offered as a sacrifice. God brought him here to the same place where Solomon's temple is going to stand hundreds of years later.
Awkward question, sir.
Yep.
Is this also the bone of contention by the Palestinians, the Arab world? This exact same spot that they also is where Muhammad, and is that what's...
The Dome of the Rock sits there today,
Okay.
right?
The Dome of the Rock.
But
Jumping ahead.
Look,
Sorry.
why don't you two have your own study?
Sorry.
No, but it's we gotta remember that for us, right? That place holds no significance because of one thing: Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. So the sacrificial system is done away with for us, right? The veil is rent in twain, which means over. No more sacrificial system because Jesus was the sacrifice, and that completes the atonement there, right? So, yeah, Satan's holding the place right now. He's holding the place.
And he's using it to create war.
He put a Mohammedan shrine.
He's using that same spot to create war.
Exactly. Bloodshed and war. It's a way of Satan, how he does his work. But remember, when Jesus comes back, where's he going to put his feet? The Mount of Olives, which is around the same place, and then poof, all that is gone, and what's going to stand there? New Jerusalem.
Wasn't that the prophecy of Amos?
Well,
In Amos?
I'm not sure.
That prophesied that his feet would stand on Mount Olives and
Mount of Olives.
that it would be divided.
Was that Amos?
This is,
I can't remember.
Amos.
It's also in Revelation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know who was the first to say
I was
it's
trying to
prophecy.
look for it in there,
But yeah, you can find it for us. That's a good point there. But this is the connection, right, that we're seeing through time. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Abraham, Isaac, King David, Solomon, to our day when Jesus returns, the second coming, or the third return actually, right? Because the New Jerusalem after the 1,000 years. So beautiful connection. The Bible gives us all these connections, right? So let's keep going here. Where are we going now? Next chapter, 1 Chronicles, chapter 16. Didn't think we were gonna dwell so much on David.
It's so loud.
But that's okay. If we cover all of this today, I'll be happy because that means next time it'll all be Solomon's temple. And then we can talk about everything that I really wanted to bring up today. First Chronicles chapter 16.
Verse?
16. Start at the first verse. Go to verse 6.
16 verse 6.
No, start at verse 1 to 6. Huh?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they brought the ark of God and set it in the midst of the tent that David had pitched for it, and they offered burnt sacrifices and peace offerings before God. And when David had made an end of offering the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord. And he dealt to every one of Israel, both man and woman, to every one a loaf of bread and a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine. And he appointed certain of the Levites to minister before the ark of the Lord and to record and to thank and praise the Lord God of Israel. Asaph the chief, and next to him Zechariah, Jael, and Shemiramoth, and Jael, and Mattathiah, and Eliab, and Benaiah, and Obadiah, and Jael with psalteries and with harps, but Asaph made a sound with cymbals. Benaiah also, and Jahaziel the priest with trumpets continually before the ark of the covenant of God.
Then on that day David first assigned Asaph and his relatives to give thanks to the Lord. O give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him, sing praises to him, speak of all his wonders. Glory in his holy name, let the heart of those who seek the Lord be glad.
Yeah, you can.
Seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face continually. Remember his wonderful deeds which he has done, his marvels and his judgments from his mouth. O seed of Israel, his servant, sons of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is the Lord our God, his judgments are in all the earth. Remember his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, the covenant which he made with Abraham, and his oath to Isaac.
Okay, hold on. What you just read right there, that's important. That's important. What are they redoing here, basically?
Tracing the covenant.
The children of Israel, right? Yeah. They're rededicating themselves by retracing the covenant. This is important because we had a prophecy earlier. Let's keep going because I'll find it.
He also confirmed it to Jacob for a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as the portion of your inheritance. When they were only a few in number, very few and strangers in it, and they wandered about from nation to nation, and from one kingdom to another people. He permitted no man to oppress them, and he reproved kings for their sake, saying, do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Proclaim good tidings of his salvation from day to day. Tell of his glory among the nations, his wonderful deeds among all the peoples. For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. He is also is to be feared above all gods, for all the gods of the peoples are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and joy are in his place. Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come before him. Worship the Lord in holy array. Tremble before him, all the earth. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved. Let the heavens be glad, and let the earth rejoice, and let them say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Let the sea roar and all it contains. Let the field exult and all that is in it. Then the trees of the forest will sing for joy before the Lord, for he is coming to judge the earth. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Then say, save us, O God of our salvation, and gather us and deliver us from the nations, to give thanks to thy holy name and the glory in thy praise. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting even to everlasting. Then all the people said, Amen, and praised the Lord.
All right. Verse 37. Now they have finished reconsecrating themselves, basically, right? And so he left there before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Asaph and his brethren to minister before the ark continually, as every day's work required. And Obed-Edom and his brethren, 38. Obed-Edom also the son of Jeduthun and Hosa, to be the porters, and Zadok the priest and his brethren the priests before the tabernacle of the Lord in the high place that was at Gibeon, to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord upon the altar of burnt offering continually, morning and evening, and to do according to all that is written in the law of the Lord, which he commanded Israel. Okay, I just saw something that I missed here. So, no, that's right. Sinai to Gilgal, from Gilgal to Shiloh, where something horrible happened, to Nob during Solomon's reign, and now we are at Gibeon. Okay, this happens when Solomon takes over, so we're not here yet. Okay, we're at Gibeon, which is near 12 miles away from another reference that I read. Okay, so Israel is now an acceptable people to the Lord again, right? For the time being. As we come to know how they always backslide and make mistakes, and then the Lord leaves them because they're not following his precepts or commandments, unfortunately. But these lessons are there for us to learn and know that we need to focus on the commandments and be faithful, right? Because if we're not faithful, we see what happens. Right? And so, let's jump over to 1 Chronicles 17, because now we're going to see an example of that. So now, remember, Samuel was the prophet when Saul was king. Samuel died years ago. So that's Saul. David, as a prophet, his name is Nathan. Nathan the prophet. And this is where we see Nathan. So 1 Chronicles chapter 17, verse 1. Now it came to pass that as David sat in his house, that David said to Nathan the prophet, Lo, I dwell in a house of cedars, but the ark of the covenant of the Lord remaineth under curtains. Now what's bugging him? What's troubling him? He's in a palace. The ark of God, his throne, right? Sits in a tent. What shall we do with this? He's feeling it in his heart, right? So what does Nathan say to him? Verse 2. Nathan said to David, Do all that is in thine heart, for God is with thee.
Amen.
That's powerful. But, somebody read verse 3 for me.
And it came about the same night that the word of God came to Nathan, saying,
Go and tell David, my servant, thus saith the Lord, thou shalt not build me an house to dwell in.
Oh. You're not worthy to build me a house. You're
I
not
don't
worthy
think he
to
was
build me
saying
a house.
that. I don't think he was saying the worthy part.
Keep going. Verse 5.
For I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I brought up Israel until this day, but have gone from tent to tent, and from one tabernacle to another. Continue.
Keep going. Yeah, let's read this whole chapter.
Wheresoever I have walked with all Israel, spake I a word to any one of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, Why have ye not built me a house of cedars?
Now therefore, thus shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus said the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, even from following the sheep, that thou shouldest be ruler over my people Israel. And I have been with thee whithersoever thou hast walked, and have cut off all thine enemies from before thee, and have made thee a name like the name of the great men that are in the earth.
Also, I will ordain a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, and they shall dwell in their place, and shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them anymore, as at the beginning.
Since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, moreover I will subdue all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that the Lord will build thee an house. And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with my fathers, that I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me an house, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him that was before thee. But I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forevermore. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak unto David.
So the Lord just told him, right? Your son will build me a house. You will not build me a house. And we can finish the chapter here. Yeah, go ahead. Whoever wants to read.
Verse 16.
16.
Then David the king went in and sat before the Lord and said, Who am I, O Lord God, and what is my house, that thou hast brought me this far? And this was a small thing in thine eyes, O God, but thou hast spoken of thy servant's house for a great while to come, and hast regarded me according to the standard of a man of high degree, O Lord God.
What can David speak more to thee for the honor of thy servant? For thou knowest thy servant.
O Lord, for thy servant's sake, and according to thine own heart, hast thou done all this greatness in making known all these great things? O Lord, there is none like thee, neither is there any God beside thee, according to all that we have heard with our ears.
Okay, stop right there. So David's basically praising God again for an answer, right? He got an answer. God spoke to him and gave him an answer.
That's
Even
a huge blessing.
yeah,
because
even
he
if it wasn't the
promised his
one,
descendant.
yeah, it wasn't what he wanted, but I'm still gonna bless you. Your son's gonna build this, and it's gonna be great, right? It's gonna be great.
Well, I think in Kings, it actually says that there's more instruction, like why God chose to he didn't want David to build it because he had too much blood on his hands from war.
That's exactly it. And that's what I'm about to read.
Kings, it's in that book.
Wait, we
Jumped
have.
ahead again. You jumped ahead
You
again.
jump ahead.
Okay, we're going to start our own Bible class. You're the jumper hitters.
You guys.
That was more than what he was expecting.
Okay.
That was way more than what David was expecting. He wasn't even
Right.
expecting all of what just came out of Nathan's mouth.
Right. No. Basically, David's saying there, I have an idea, right? I want to do this because I feel like, well, I live in a palace. Shouldn't the Lord be blessed with something great too? And then God actually had a plan. Hey, Nathan the prophet, tell David, this is what I want done.
And it's interesting too because when they came out of, and I think this is going back to last week, I think, when they came out of Babylon, the captivity with Ezra and Nehemiah, to go back to Jerusalem and start to build, Nahum brought this particular point where he said, wait a minute, you have your nice houses, but the Lord's house is left desolate. It's time to build. It's time to build. You know, he kept telling them over and over, it's time to build. And I remember about last year, I was doing some reading in the Spirit of Prophecy. And one of the reference that jumped out at me was Ellen White was saying that when we're building a house for God, a worship place, she said oftentimes we make it cheap and usually it's in debt. While the ones that we live in, they're debt free and they're nice, but we come to the. And when I was reading that, I was really rebuked because she's saying that whatever structure we erect for God should not be in debt. Should never be in debt. And I was thinking, that the average church you go to, there's always a donor who wants to match a particular donation, and I'm thinking maybe the leadership should see these references and be able to bring it to the mind of the congregation, because I think it will just sort of bring people to the reality of what we're doing when we say we have designated a building for God. And when I saw that reference about the house of God should not be a structure that is in debt, it just struck something in my mind.
I just remembered something reading about that as well, and she even said that for the church not to be in debt, the other churches that are neighboring churches should help out in building that church so that they do not go in debt. The churches should help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's very important. You had your hand.
Regarding David, being a man of war, with blood and it was stated in a different context. In the Bible, I don't remember where, but it said something like, because Israel has enemies around them still. That is one of the reasons why David was, because in the time of Solomon, you notice they didn't have any war.
Yeah.
So and rest at that time.
We actually skipped over that because
it was
Second Samuel talks about that. 2 Samuel chapter 7 and 8. You want to go there later. But it was after the enemies were cleared out. So God gave him rest from his enemies. Is what you'll read in chapter 7 and 8, 2 Samuel. But we skipped that because we're trying to focus on the tabernacle and the ark, right? So on that note, right? Let me read here. It now pleased God that the sanctuary should take a more permanent form. All necessity for a movable structure to be temporarily located in different places had ceased to exist. The period of Israel's journeys have long gone by. So, the long journey from Sinai to Gibeon to the permanent temple of Solomon, right? The period of the judges, during which the affairs of Israel were often uncertain and the times troublous, though exceeding in duration more than 4 times the length, actually 5 times the length of the existence of our own government, the United States, was at length ended. The tribes of Israel were consolidated into a new and powerful kingdom. Under David, the Hebrew scepter established its broadest sway. At length, God gave him rest from all his enemies round about. And that's 2 Samuel chapter 7 and 8. Then came the house of God into his mind, and to the prophet Nathan he thus spoke. See now, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of God dwelleth within curtains. This doubtless refers to the tent, which he had pitched for it in the city of David, of which the words of Uriah the Hittite, 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 11, may also be understood. So that's a reference there that was spoken of. I can't pull it right now. Somebody look that up real quick. 2 Samuel 11:11. Just see what it says there.
It says, and Uriah said to David, the ark in Israel and Judah are staying in temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open fields. Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? By your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing.
Okay, so once more concern of, hey, this is not in a proper place, right? Let's make a proper place. So, continuing on. The prophet approved of what was implied in the language of David, that he proposed to prepare a suitable structure for the permanent abiding place of the ark of God. And he said to him, do all that is in thine heart, for God is with thee. But the Lord the same night reversed the decision of the prophet, saying to the king that he could not build a house for him to dwell in, for he had been a man of war and had shed much blood. This was an important and holy work. In this house, the olive branch of peace was to be held out by heaven to a rebellious world, and none but those whose lives had been passed in peace could be employed in its erection.
I'm sorry, where were you reading that?
This is 2300 Day Prophecy and the Condemned by Uriah Smith. No, that's not that. This is one of the books the pioneers wrote to give us a bit more light to the temple there. So that in of itself is the reason why God said your son's going to do it, because your son doesn't have any blood on his hands, right? So, go ahead.
The blood on his hand is really Uriah's blood. It was really that the adultery with the it wasn't so much the wars, but it's what took place between Bathsheba and how he orchestrated the death of Uriah, and that really was what.
Was that his name? Was that his name? Bathsheba's husband?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was really what caused him to be, not qualified to build a temple.
The blood wars.
No, the blood from the wars. Yeah, they were.
The wars.
The innocent Uriah that he, put in front of his father.
Because he paid it through his son for that already, for his son, his firstborn to die. God told him that he was gonna die for being sick, and so he ultimately paid for it already. I think it's more coming from battle.
No, it says there when you go back to the story why. Yeah, because you mentioned in the Kings, when you're reading about the life of the kings, you pretty much need to have First and Second Kings and First and Second Chronicles in your mind to see the entire picture, because it gives the chronological order, but it's all over the place. So if you don't know the flow from the first and second Kings and what was happening with David, Solomon, and so on, you won't see the connection right there. Because when Nathan comes into the picture, what introduced Nathan to David, it was what he did with Bathsheba, and he thought everything was okay because he covered it up. He's hiding the woman, and that's when Nathan comes to him, gives the analogy of the sheep, and go thou art the man. So from that point onwards, Nathan now becomes the prophet assigned to David. So it's not like Nathan just say, yeah, do whatever God wants you to do. That was, as I said, it's not in chronological sequence in Chronicles. Chronicles just pick bits and pieces. We have to read it in First and Second Kings to see the whole history unfolding and what really happened.
Very good. How are we doing on time?
You got 10.
506.
Okay. Yeah, because we're getting to a good stopping point here. We'll finish David here today, and then continue next week with the actual temple, and that's good. Cause when I did the review this at the beginning, we talked about the tabernacle and the ark and its positioning and everything. We're not going to talk about that today. We're not going to get to it. But once we hit Solomon's temple, that's when all of that's going to come out. And we're going to have a clear understanding where all the furniture goes. Because the Bible tells us exactly where the holy place furniture is. Spirit of prophecy does as well. But in the most holy place, we're kind of not so exact. Solomon's temple has the answer. We're going to get that next week, and it'll be pretty good because a few things are actually going to come to light that aren't very common in people's understanding of the temple. So that might open a few eyes and might surprise a few people. So we'll hit that too. Mike.
So, Professor, what do we read for context for preparation next week? What should we be reading? The rest of Chronicles?
So,
or chapters in
Second Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 2, chapter 7 and 8 is a good starting point. Chronicles chapter 17. Chapter 17. Did we just read that? We read 16, right?
Probably did 17.
We did 17 too. Okay.
Yeah,
No.
16. No,
Yeah. Read the next few chapters up to chapter 22, and that'll get us to where we're going to be next week. Yeah, if you want to have some reading there. Because we'll probably start off there. Yeah, First Chronicles chapter 22. We'll start off there next week.